Before we kick things off,
Yes.
though, I want to do a little icebreaker. It's something that my client success team has done when we welcome new hires to the Degreed family. We recorded videos, we introduced ourselves, and we explained what our favorite book or podcast is right now and why. Gene, let me know.
Well, I'll podcasts. I'm an avid podcast listener on my long 1-hour commute. The two podcasts that have been really resonating with me as of late, one is Caliphate. I don't know if there are any folks out there that have listened to that podcast, but kind of an insider look at someone that was recruited into the ISIS organization and their journey, and then their journey out of ISIS. The other one, though, is The Moth, because I love storytelling, and that is actually at Booz Allen. I was so inspired by The Moth podcast that starting up a live storytelling event within Booz Allen next month. So we'll see how that goes.
Awesome.
But those are kind of a couple things that have really resonated with me.
Moth's a personal favorite of mine. I'm going to bid you farewell for the next 8 to 10 minutes, let you kick off the session, but I'll be back, don't you worry.
Wonderful. Thank you, Taryn. All right, well, there's the two of us here already. And, just a little bit outline of where we're headed for the next 30, 45 minutes or so. But I wanted to start it off with this. Just want to get a sense of who in this room knows what this image is. Okay, we got a few people. It's hard to see everyone out there, but somebody shouted out, what is this from? U2. What album? War. Thank you so much. This was the first piece of music that I ever purchased and that I listened to from front to back over and over again. I believe it was like 1984 or so, somewhere in the early 80s. And it was just somebody turned me on to U2. I had never heard about them before, but it was the first album that spoke to me. And there was something haunting about this image that just kind of pierced, that look in this boy's eyes. But it just made me think about my music journey. I want to encourage you, just right where you are, would you turn to the person to the left or to the right? This is the interactive piece of the session. And just share with them two things. What was the first piece of music that you purchased or I guess purchased, as well as what format was it in? That might reveal a little bit about our generation here, but if you would take 30 seconds to do that. All right. Sounds like this is bringing back a lot of memories for folks. I don't think, just a quick show of hands. How many of you said album was, kind of your first introduction and purchased piece of music? I think one of those, what are those things called? That's still an album if you were back then when you were cranking out the big sound thing, right? So that's still album. We won't call those people out. How about like cassette tape? All right, a lot of cassette. 8-track folks? Okay. CDs? We're getting a little bit younger now. All right. Did anyone start in the Napster age and MP3s? Download was your kind of, it's okay, it's a safe room here. You could admit to your sins of music past. For me, my journey, and yours might look something very similar to this, whether it's album, cassette, kind of, a CD, wherever your journey started, it probably quickly transferred over to MP3s. And then from there, something like iTunes, and now to the point where maybe Pandora, Spotify, or something in that realm is what your music is, how you typically consume music. And so when I look at this, it has drastically changed, when we look at our music behaviors. And I like the story because it is so parallel to really the learning journey that many of us and many of our organizations has undergone. When you buy the entire album, you don't really have an option, especially before the days of singles. you buy the whole piece and you get the whole album, all 10, 12, however many songs there are on the album, and you're given that whole piece. And I kind of liken that to maybe an entire instructor-led course where you do have to spend a couple of days and you're committed to that piece of training, or maybe it's a 30-minute web module, and there's still a place for those two things in our world, very much so. Especially to get to some of the deeper knowledge and skills and behavioral changes. However, over time, just like our music, our learning has gone smaller and smaller and smaller and more individualized, more personalized, to the point where it's, solutions are telling us what music we like and can predict that and anticipate that. And learning has evolved in that way as well. We did an internal study here at Booz Allen, and we looked at how we took a deep dive and through some really just fascinating interviews with folks all throughout our organization. We looked at what learners are looking for, and this is probably no different than any other kind of industry research that you've come across or what you've done in your organization, but really some of the key things were flexibility. Don't tell me how I should learn. Let me control how I learn and give me the flexibility to support that. Personalization, just like our music, right? I'm not forced to listen to a certain radio station and can't skip over the next song, but give me the music or give me the learning that is relevant to me when I want it. And it's also, this last piece was so critical in our organization because we really struggled with this piece, is our users were looking for a frictionless experience, right? So no longer was it the required training that I have to take, but give me an experience around that, because I am getting an experience in the rest of my life in all of these other places, either where I go shopping or engage with others online and so forth. And so I expect that same experience to be in my corporate environment, not with just all of our IT solutions and our processes internally, but also with learning. And so that was the expectation that we were seeing throughout our organization. And so we took that and then bumped that up against some things about who we are as Booz Allen. And for those that aren't aware, we do not sell alcohol. That's not our business. But what we do is government consulting as a large part of that. We've got a 100-year history around consulting, management consulting, but originally in its roots, and it's always part of our DNA, but it's really morphed into delivering technology and digital solutions for our clients through things like cybersecurity, data science, other solutions where technology is a critical component layered on with processes and the consulting around the business management to primarily government. Government client is 95% of our work. We are facing a tremendous growth trajectory. So the business is growing. There's a tremendous backlog of work and contracts that we've won that we are ready to fill and put people onto and begin to tackle that complicated work. But yet, the problem is finding and retaining top talent to fill these contracts, because the contracts do specify the types of skills, the types of roles, the number of experiences, the certifications that the employees need to in order to qualify for these contracts. And so the huge challenge for us as an organization, and I know this is nothing probably very different for many of you, but coming from the DC metro area, the fight for talent and the battle for talent is extreme. And so how do we as Booz Allen try to differentiate? One of our things is providing a propelling employee value proposition. And so we've been really telling a story about what it means to work for Booz Allen, what it means how can you bring your best self to Booz Allen? How can we as from the firm side partner with you and give you ultimately the empowerment to be empowered to change the world? That's kind of our mission statement. And out of that kind of research and understanding our talent base, and it's great to hear some of the themes from this morning, is that that people are wanting to build relevant skills. And so we landed on three things. They were saying, give us opportunity and choice in my career, i.e. mobility and how I want my career to look like, show appreciation for my work, and then the last thing was help me to build relevant skills. Give me the opportunities to learn new things. Support me in my training and my development. Help me find mentors and all of that in a frictionless experience. So no small task for any of us, right? Out of that came then this partnership, because we were looking at, okay, here's our employee value proposition. We are in the business of essentially selling skills through our people, much like the company from this morning, and selling that off. People are our capital, and they are our product. And so the more that we can make our employees from their standpoint, from a value proposition that will want them to come join our firm and stay with our firm and build a career out through our firm. But then also when we took at the learner study of make it easy for me, it really married up nicely. And some of the skills that we're looking at are, just to give you a sense of, right now we're about 25,000 employees and growing rapidly. But to give you a sense of the types of skills and the sense at which we need these skills within our organization, we've got an initiative of developing 5,000 data scientists in the next few years, and we're kind of well on our way towards that. But that's the type of demand that we're facing and the pressure that we're facing in order to develop data scientists, taking data analysts or business analysts or those that show aptitude and kind of a certain amount of acumen in a certain area, and then transforming into data scientists. And so we recognize some of it we have to retain from the outside, some of it we have to build internally, and it's not one size solution. But that give you a sense of the internal kind of understanding of then how Degreed fits in. And we'll talk about the Degreed piece in just a little bit here. But in order to enable this, for me, there really needed to be a pretty big mind shift change. For me, this meant not doing L&D as we've always done it. Now, mind you, our firm is work with the government, so there's a lot of regulations, a lot of compliance-driven pieces, components, a lot of things that we have to account, and so it's a very careful environment in many ways. We're a lot of accountability checks. But we also, while respecting that, we also wanted to push the boundaries of what learning could look like and should look like. And so at this point, I'd love to take a few more minutes to talk about this new approach, new mindset, and what that meant for Booz Allen in our journey. And, it's funny because you have conferences like this and you have people come up and, we're supposed to impart something very wise to the audience here. And for me, it's, I'm just going to tell our story, approach it in the way that we felt like it was best for us. And hopefully there's something out of that will benefit each and every one of your organizations. So at this point, let me reverse roles here and invite Taryn back up to the stage. And Taryn, would you like to join us here?
Are you giving me the choice?
You have the choice. The Airbnb session is going well, I'm so sure, but you need to stay here. All right.
So you talked about pushing boundaries, right? And I think a lot of the questions some of you guys probably have, what our client success team has heard directly, is around governance. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your governance strategy, because I know Booz Allen encourages the community to knowledge share solely through informal learning practices.
Yeah. What's
the standard that you apply to bringing in approved content?
Yeah.
And then what does that content strategy look like?
This was we had a lot of discussions around this, and at the end of the day, we all really, really realized that we had formal avenues and systems of learning. And so the power of Degreed and open social and informal environment for us was just really leveraging, for me, that's the heartbeat of Degreed in many ways, is to really empower our employees. And for us, going back to that frictionless experience, it was tearing down any barriers to learning and partnering with the rest of our organization. So let me give you a couple examples. One is we really empowered our business owners to take ownership of their respective areas. So what that meant for us from a system permissions basis, we opened everything up. So anyone in the organization, every 25,000 employees can add something to the internal catalog. So that was a little risky. Anyone can create a pathway and share it broadly, not just in their network, but with the rest of the organization. Anyone can upload a video, and we've actually put a program around that called I Explain. And so we're putting some contests and some fun around it, but anyone can share their expertise with anyone else in the organization through this program that we have. And so it's funny, there was this one gentleman, remember, we're government consulting, but he put a video up about how to pick locks. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh man, that one doesn't feel right, you know? And so, but the more I think about it, a couple of things will happen. People will find that information either interesting, because yes, it was to pick locks, but he used it to mind agility and mental training. And so that was the positioning of that video. And so, but he uploaded that, and either if somebody finds that video inappropriate, they're going to flag it as inappropriate. And we'll figure out, is it really inappropriate or not? Somebody will say, okay, well, that's not very accurate. That's not the way you really pick locks. Here's how you do it, you know? And if that's the case, then, okay, there's learning in that. Here's how not to do it. Here's how you can do it. And so part of our mindset is just really making this environment a little bit like the Wild Wild West. It's so against how we're approaching the rest of our organization, but we're comfortable with that because, yes, there is absolutely, don't get me wrong, there's risk in that, but we wanted it wide open because through the algorithms, through the machine learning that is built in, the stuff that is good is going to rise to the top anyways. And then also from the L&D side, there had to be this transformation of mindset in that it's and as L&D, I'm an L&D professional, as many of you are, and sometimes we don't like to hear that we are the conveyors of all things learning. But to scale ourselves out to the rest of the organization, we needed to empower the rest of the business in order to figure out what learning looks like for them. Because inside of many of you are much larger organizations, but inside of, a 25,000 employee organization, it's gonna look so different and it's complicated. We're completely matrixed, and our priorities shift and change, and so we needed learning to shift immediately, quickly, in advance of those changes. And so that's kind of been some of our approaches there.
And that's a good point, right? We're talking about a global employee workforce of 25,000 individuals. We've put this governance strategy in place. We've empowered all Booz Allen employees to contribute to the internal ecosystem of learning that you've put together. You've designed and have executed this content strategy, but when talking about such a large group of people, you've got to tell me, what's your go-to market strategy, right? How are you ensuring optimal success with engagement and adoption so that this isn't just a new and shiny object? What are you doing to ensure repeat offenders?
So,
and not offenders because we're teaching how to pick locks.
That's right. Got a little bit of a criminal theme here going this morning, but that's an important part for all of our organizations to really think through. For us, it meant also looking a little bit differently. So yesterday, if you were part of some of the sessions about the G3 around the CEO, CFO, and the Chief HR Officer, they were a critical component of us, but I would differ a little bit in our approach there because what we find that is emails and communication that come out from the top level, because of so much noise, so much initiatives, and so much communication that is coming back and forth, it just got lost. And so for us, the greatest value was really partnering with individual business units. So right at the beginning, just leading up to the launch, we probably did over 75 different sessions with different individual business groups, whether it was all hands meetings for the finance team, or it was our military health account. Whatever it was, we tried to get on everyone's agenda so that people were aware. And so it was not quite a bottoms up nor a top down, but it was a middle approach. And that's where we found our niche to be. And through that, we found a lot of traction because you had levels of people that would be in the tool because, quite honestly, at a larger company, the CEO, he really does value training and learning and the development of our people, but realistically, he's probably not going to be in the tool directly. And so for us, it meant really partnering with these business leaders. They understand what skills are critical. They tell they have a great idea of what skills are emerging, what types of capabilities we need to have, not just now, but in the 3 to 5 year and beyond span. And so we empowered them. We gave them the tools, a little bit of guidance, and I don't want to even say governance because that's too strong of a word, but we provided a little consulting, opened up the permissions, let them have at it, and just really allow them to drive a lot of these pieces. Internally in the L&D side, we really made sure that all of the areas of L&D understood what this meant for us. This was a mind shift too for our internal L&D organization in that we no longer could be viewed as, yes, there's always a place for instructional design and creating content, but for us, the shift really went towards experienced managers, product managers, and looking at our roles in that way versus just creating content, because now it was more about curation of good content that already exists out there and pulling all of that in. And so that for us was a way for us to be a little bit more nimble and agile and really responsive to the needs of our organization. And just a side note, it's even things like, Kirkpatrick model for us has served us well for many, many years from an evaluation standpoint. But, Net Promoter is our go-to number now. We're looking at what our Net Promoter scores are with all of our offerings and just really having that type of product mindset in terms of how L&D is approaching kind of how we are going to market with a lot of these pieces. The last thing, if I may, because I know you need to stop me here at some point, so I could go on for hours.
Speed it up.
But I see the clock. The other piece is, there was definitely communications and some change management around this new tool, but we felt like this new tool, as great as Degreed is, no offense to the Degreed team here, you have a great product, but that's not what was going to sell Degreed. For us, we had to attach Degreed to other firm-wide things and organization-wide things that was happening. So our EVP, anytime there's mention of an EVP piece, then there is a Degreed pathway supporting it. So they don't even know that sometimes that they're going to Degreed, but we're connecting them into Degreed to support all of these other things. October is Cyber Security Awareness Month. And so as we have that push, pointing them things towards Degreed. And so they're getting exposure to the tool without really realizing what's behind it.
Okay, so you talked, selling Degreed, getting buy-in internally, right, to make this a long-term partnership. The million-dollar question.
Okay.
No pressure. What does success truly look like to you? And when I say that, what I mean is, how have you aligned then a measurement strategy based on formal and informal learning activities and have been able to tie that back to, core business objectives, overarching organizational goals. What have you done to put that in place?
Yeah, and so for us, kind of at the theoretical high level, kind of conceptually, we had to start as an L&D organization just really speaking the language of the business and looking at numbers from a business perspective, meaning what is our C-level suite, what are they interested in? For them, obviously, revenue, bottom line is a big piece of that with our stakeholders and our board. But beyond that, another huge priority is around attrition and retention and the development of our people, so that then we can place them into contracts and to bill against this work. So as an L&D organization, all of our dashboards, all of our reports really roll up into those high-level business impact areas. If we are going to our leadership and saying, okay, we've got 98% penetration rate in Degreed, and they've adopted Degreed and are engaged with Degreed, that's great, but that's not enough. It really has to speak the language of the business and say, okay, those that are inside of Degreed, those that are taking learning at X Factor, they are more likely to be engaged with the firm, with the organization, and their experience with the organization is higher, leading to retention of those folks. And so it's trying to make those translations, because as L&D, for anyone that's been in L&D, our challenge has been budget. And I think it's getting easier over the years because folks are waking up to the need of the building our talent. However, budgets is still a reality that we come up against. And so especially when times are lean, they look towards the L&D organization and other parts of kind of internal resources to begin to look for kind of some savings. So in times when it's good, we have to show that there is value in this, not just in downturn, but especially all the more in the upturn, so that we can prepare for those days that are possibly ahead. So that's been a big piece of this, really. And so practically what this means for us is we are comparing, kind of a lot of our learning numbers against those big business areas. And really, if we can't answer that, hey, and it's hard because how do you isolate one solution, one resource versus everything else that's going on in your organization? And so it's difficult. And so I don't think anyone is asking for a direct one-to-one causal relationship, but just some of those correlations. If those folks that are more engaged in learning, that is taking our offerings, that is sharing content, that is building pathways, that is consuming these pathways, and so forth. Does that translate in any way to, are they more connected to the firm? Are they more likely to stay? Do they have a greater rate of getting into more desirable positions? What does promotion look like? And so this is early for us, because this is really a shift. We have always strived for this, but now we're actually trying to do it. And so that's why having precise data come out of Degreed is so critical for us. And to all the Degreed folks, that's a big ask for us from our side.
I know I've asked a ton of questions. I do want to give about 5, maybe 7 minutes devoted to you guys. We would like to just open up the audience for Q&A. Would love to hear what you have.
Hello there.
Hi.
About a year ago, I was in line at Shake Shack at Tyson's Mall.
Okay.
I was in line with one of your engineers, and I recruited him away to Capital One. So I just want to get that out there. Since you mentioned the talent and recruiting stuff. But seriously, though, so how are you curating within this? So as you have more and more folks sharing stuff, do you have like a team of folks curating stuff? Do you have some automations? What's that look like for you?
So it really is, we have things coming out of what let's call internal corporate. So those that are officially, it's part of their role to curate stuff, pull in stuff, package it into a pathway. But really, as I was talking about earlier, we've empowered everyone to be able to do that. And so individual teams, teams of 10 are curating their own content. There's larger accounts, that's maybe several hundred people. They're curating their own accounts. Some of the use cases really has been around team onboarding, not at the, we're using it at, using it at the firm-wide level, really driving people from day one into this environment. But really, most of the magic and the power of this tool has been unleashed to the rest of the firm. And so it's, for me, it was, my previous work, I came from out of America, and so used to driving like powerful cars. And so it's like putting an R8 inside of a garage. I'd rather have it on the roads. And that's kind of has been our approach, to let teams curate it. And there's always that challenge, like, what if they put out something and corporate, internal has a different view on it? Well, you know what? Whatever is, as long as it's not inaccurate or inappropriate, if their team is finding value in that, by all means, we're kind of leaving that wide open. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Gene. Maureen from MasterCard.
Hi.
You really got my curiosity going, saying that you needed to train 5,000 data scientists, which is unbelievable. I give you a lot of credit. I'm curious to know, what are your plans for doing that?
Yeah.
You have the degree platform, they have skill review, and I know they have certification, but are you also culling or curating internal content? Are you using internal subject matter experts? And what's your time frame? Because it's something that we're all looking at, so
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So inside of Degreed, the way we have it, because one of our challenges is to find the right content. So the way we've positioned Degreed is not that it will get you to that deep level of content right now until we have a few more key partnerships from a content perspective. So a lot of what's happening in Degreed is that initial introduction, kind of, hey, here's some top level, get familiar with some areas around data science. There's a lot of stuff in there around Python and R and some technologies and so forth. But we've also partnered with a couple of, with one key organization that is doing the either truly online, truly in person, and people can sign up for that through Degreed, and they have that partnership and tie-in. And so Degreed takes care of the front piece of it, but then there's a whole deeper level. And so I don't think Degreed will answer the call to create 5,000 data scientists. It just won't, at least the way we have the pieces in there. However, it plays a part in building that initial introduction and layer, and then from there, there's some deeper skills building that can take place. And so I'm happy to talk to you a little bit offline, a little bit more about some of the details around what that program looks like. Yeah.
We've got a question back in the back of the room here.
Okay.
Hi. So since what you're trying to do is build skills for people so that you can ultimately build those people
Yes.
to clients, how do you ensure that training is prioritized both to the employee over like billable hours
Yeah.
and what they're supposed to be spending their time, as well as to their manager,
Yeah.
to make sure that they're billing their time?
Absolutely. So a huge challenge in our environment. If an employee is spending 40 hours and they're billing that 40 hours to their client, then you got to find that time. It's a practical challenge. However, the mindset of our people, and you heard it this morning, is that they are hungry and thirsty for learning. Whether it's because of mobility, whether it's because of increased compensation, or whether it's simply because that desire to be an expert and a SME and be known and have their own personal brand as somebody, or maybe it's just meaningful for them. And so we find that the desire to learn is very strong, and so people find. We just did extended learning to weekends, voluntary time. People gave up their time willingly to come in on a weekend in order to learn. And so that was for our instructor-led offerings. But it's, I always tell the story around Degreed is in the mobile app, 5 minutes waiting for my daughter, pick up my daughter from soccer practice. I learned right then and there. And so we have people, because the desire is strong enough, that they are finding ways outside of their normal 40 because they see the value in it, as well as we've made it as frictionless as possible to enable that.
Probably got room for one more question.
Hey there. Question. Okay, good. Hey, I'm Vic. I'm also from the Tysons area. We're a tech forum. Our office sits right between the Booz Allen and the Top One office here. So, hello, hello. So my question was around kind of, well, it's a two-parter. Your pre-implementation strategy of going to the business units and really having that conversation. Can you talk a bit more about what kind of conversations, like were you having with those people prior, and why you felt it was so important to have those conversations first? And then that's pre. Now, I guess now post, what kind of things are you doing to encourage engagement on the platform? Because when you're talking about a platform like this, a key, score is, well, how many people are using it? What's the engagement? So what, tips can you tell us about encouraging engagement on the platform?
Yeah.
Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. For us, those initial conversations were really awkward and a little bit like a lot of head scratching, because the number one question, are you replacing the LMS? That's the question we got most often. Or how does the LMS work with this? And now you want to have YouTube videos in there? And so it just quite didn't make sense. And so that was kind of our starting point. But once we positioned it really as not just a new way to learn, but a new way for you to get information to your employees, because we positioned it as a little bit of knowledge management, but also learning. And that seemed to really resonate with folks. And so as they were starting to build pathways and curate content on their own, they were pointing to things, resources in their SharePoint drives and our intranet environment. And usage of that stuff and visibility towards that spiked up because of Degreed, whereas that was always kind of an internal challenge for us, right? And so we positioned that as, okay, you know what? It's not something that you come through L&D, we're gonna, yep, pathway, check, good. Let's publish it. But they know their needs best. And so once they saw it as an empowerment tool for their organization, then I think there was a lot of, and we picked on a couple of use cases, especially around team onboarding. So in our health account, we're looking at, okay, a health 101. So everyone that is part of that organization, here's your baseline knowledge that you need to have. And the leaders, that's what they were looking for. That's what they wanted. That's always kind of top of mind for them, because there's so many new people coming to the organization. So finding the use case that fit that particular business, and that was in my mind, the beauty of this approach, because it wasn't a one-size-fits-all. For us, just real quickly, the second part of your question was, yes, there's some kind of click-through, number of clicks, number of active users per month, 30 days, all of that good stuff. But the couple pieces that we really keep an eye out on are the number of shares, because that shows the next level of engagement beyond just, you have your browsers and your lurkers and you're just people that are kind of going through. But then those people that are sharing and adding content was critical for us, because that was a big piece of, okay, this tool is catching on. They have the browser plugin. They are adding things to the internal content, which is what we want them to do. The second piece was, who is creating pathways? Is it just by these formal COEs, and or is it at the individual team level? So it's really trying to look at those two pieces inside of the platform to measure, okay, not just usage, because that was of some value, and that helps, but it doesn't, for me, tell the story of Degreed.
And the social piece is, I think, vital, right? It's one of the core ways that Degreed connects content to people and relevant content to people. The more engagement you see from a sharing perspective, whether you're targeting specific groups of folks or it's the entire community, the more you recommend, the more you share, the more your personal feed legitimately makes sense to you as an individual. Hate to cut you guys short. Content from this session, additional supplemental material will be in the Lens 2018 pathway. Gene, thank you so much.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Couple of